And I sat down for an exclusive interview with Texas Governor Greg Abbott. He says illegal activity has gotten worse over the last year, but just as alarming as the human trafficking is the amount of illicit deadly drugs coming into America.
So one thing that's taken place is that the problem has grown only worse. The number of people coming across the border has continued to increase. And along those lines, it's just astonishing that we have a president who is failing to step up and do anything about it. Talk about drugs and the border being breached. And so over the past calendar year, there have been about 2 million people come across the border illegally from more than 150 different countries across the entire globe, including, Maria, people coming from terrorist-based nations. We have a president who's in charge, who's not protecting us from national security by allowing people from terrorist-based nations come across our border. And then even worse is this deadly fentanyl. The president knows what the president does not care about the lives of fellow Americans by stopping fentanyl. Let me tell you this. Over the past year, Texas law enforcement has seized enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in Texas, California, New York, Illinois, and Florida combined.
Wow. And
President Biden does not care. I'll give you this fact, and that is of the age group 18 to 45, this past year, more people died of fentanyl than from COVID, than from car wrecks, than from cancer. This is deadly, and we have a president who is allowing it to continue to come across the border. It's coming from China through Mexico to the United States, and it is Texas law enforcement that's having to step up and do it. The reason why Texas law enforcement is doing it is because Biden does not provide the adequate number of Border Patrol, whose sworn job it is to guard and secure our border. Instead, they're just processing people who are coming across the border. So it is Texas who were. Since the last time I saw you down here, we have added about 10,000 National Guard, more DPS officers. We are making arrests of people coming across the border illegally.
Yeah.
And since the last time you were down here, Texas is now building our own border wall.
Yeah, that is incredible. And I want to talk about that. We're going to go see the border wall as well. But let me go back to some of the things you mentioned. First off, the fentanyl. If this is being made, the underlying components made in China, why is China sending us this fentanyl? I know it comes through Mexico, but are they trying to kill us off? We know that there's COVID, there was the intellectual property theft. I mean, China is an adversary. What's the answer?
And along those lines of potentially killing people off, the audience needs to know that a deadly dose of fentanyl is 2 milligrams. It's smaller than 2 grains of salt. And before the end of this year, there will be more than enough fentanyl seized to kill all Americans. And so this is an existential threat to the United States. It's a national security-based issue, especially being the fact that it's coming from China. Being stopped. There are countless ways that this could be given to people that would kill so many Americans. The president has to stop sitting in his bedroom and get out and do something about this.
I do not think I've heard President Biden mention fentanyl once.
I've never heard it.
In a year.
Maria, he does not care. The American public needs to know he doesn't care about the deadly fentanyl.
Well, I want to ask you about this lawlessness happening because the Supreme Court ruled that the vaccine mandate was unconstitutional. We also know that the courts ruled that they have to reinstitute Remain in Mexico. Now, if you have 2 million people having breached the border over the last year and only, 267 people have been sent back to Mexico? Are they actually reinstating Remain in Mexico, or are they blowing it off?
Let me put this in context. You probably have reported on the lawlessness that we've seen in cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles, and Portland and Seattle and Minneapolis, Chicago, and New York City, where they have defund the police or they have criminals who are completely disregarding law enforcement. That attitude starts at the top. It starts with the president. And when you have a president of the United States who himself is ignoring the law, refusing to enforce the law, allowing criminals to break that law, that goes down into the entire system. Right. And that's why when Biden does not enforce the border security laws, when Biden allows people in the country illegally, knowingly, and telling the public that people get to roam around illegally, when Biden is involved in secretly transporting people that they apprehend down here and they drop off in New York State, People see that, and they know that's lawlessness. And I tell you what, there's an uprising in the attitude of Americans about this anger, and the lid's about to blow the top. And unless and until the president himself is enforcing the rule of law, and that includes the immigration laws passed by Congress that exist right now. It includes the Constitution of the United States that requires the president to secure the border. One last thing about this, Maria. Americans are angry that the president is deploying people, risking their lives, and spending millions, if not billions, of American taxpayer dollars to secure the borders of other countries that probably will never have any effect in Texas or the United States of America. But the president will not deploy the resources needed to secure our own border here in the United States.
Well, he's very worried about the Ukraine border right now. Have you heard from President Biden on this border?
No, never.
Never. That's incredible. I want to get back to this story that Fox News has exclusive video. Bill Malugin did a great job breaking open this story where we actually have pictures of unaccompanied white males being dumped in, buses and then bused to private jets, dropped off in cities across the country. Our reporters spoke with them and they said, we're going to Miami, we're going to Houston, we're going here, we're going there. Are they doing this secretly so that the public doesn't find out?
They're doing it secretly in part so that the public will not see what's going on and will not be as angry as they obviously would be. I think another reason why they're doing it secretly is because it's in violation of law. And it actually also is in violation of a court order here in Texas. Let me explain. Texas brought a lawsuit against the Biden administration for releasing people like this. And they told the court they would not release any single adult men into the United States. Instead, they would comply with the Title 42 requirements and send them back. And they told the court, the federal district court here in Texas, they would do that. They are acting contrary to what they told a federal judge. We're going to be asking the federal judge to put sanctions on the Biden administration for not complying with the federal court order and not complying with federal law.
Because Title 42 said that you're supposed to send unaccompanied males back.
Exactly.
And all of these unaccompanied males are going to Miami, Houston, and other big cities.
Right. And that is not only what the law says, it's what the Biden administration told this federal judge himself. And they're going to be in a lot of trouble. Well,
where is this going? Because he's the president. And if he's, breaking the law, so far there hasn't been any accountability.
You raise a great question. I tell you where accountability needs to begin. So there's the president and the Secretary Mayorkas. I saw calls already earlier this week by members of the U.S. House of Representatives calling for the impeachment of Mayorkas. That process needs to begin, and that process needs to go wherever it may lead. There's lawlessness in the United States of America right now, and it starts at the top position in the country. It needs to stop, and Biden needs to be held accountable for the lawlessness he himself is causing.
Well, your troopers, your Department of Public Safety have been job. Are looking at resources strained. I was told that 156 miles in Arizona, you've got 4 agents.
Yeah, it's just outrageous. And so, part of the way that Biden seemingly allows people to increasingly come across the border is by Biden reducing the resources that he is deploying to the border. Texas as a state is deploying more resources to the border than the United States of America as a country. Texas taxpayers alone in just the next 2 years, we're spending $3 billion to secure a border. I think that's far more than what the federal government is spending here in Texas or here in the United States. Why is it the states that are having to step up and do the federal government's job to secure the border? I'll answer the question. Because Biden wants open borders. His party wants open borders, which is why no one in leadership positions in Washington, D.C. are doing anything to hold the president accountable.
Why? Why does he want wide open borders?
I never have understood this, because he campaigned on open borders, and we saw, for example, Beto O'Rourke here in the state of Texas campaign on open borders. Why they have this ideology of opening our border to people from more than 150 countries across the world, I have no idea. However, what I do know is that it's been reckless, dangerous, and deadly. not just with the fentanyl drugs, but with people killed in this region, people's ranches being ripped apart, people's neighborhoods being disturbed. There are people in this area. You mentioned this is your 4th trip down here. I come down here on average more than 4 times a month, and I talk to the locals down here about what's going on. They are angry about the president. They are angry about the Democrat leadership in Washington, D.C. not doing anything to keep their communities safe.
Yeah, I want to get back to that because I've spoken with a number of ranchers, and they said that their ranches are getting trashed, gates broken in, and, you know, they could see people are there. But you just mentioned Beto O'Rourke. You've got your upcoming re-election campaign. How are you feeling? Have we heard anything about this border crisis from Beto O'Rourke?
So Beto O'Rourke is actually complaining about me securing the border. So he's living up to the open border policies that he campaigned on when he ran for president. Imagine what Texas would be like if we had open border Beto working along the side of open border Biden. It would be catastrophic. And that's why so many Texans, including historically Democrats in this region in South Texas, supporting me because they know I am the only one who's going to protect them, to keep them safe from these crazy open border policies.
And you want to tell us what your priorities are in a new term?
First thing we have to do, we must continue to secure the border. Second thing is we want to make sure that parents are going to be put back into the rightful position of being the primary decision makers for their children as it concerns their health care and their education. We shouldn't have other people telling a parent whether or not their child should wear a mask or take a vaccine or whatever the case may be. That is a parent's right to make that decision.